So now we've got our MIDI in this into GarageBand. It's probably actually a good idea to save now. Should have probably done that in the previous video. I've pressed Command S. That's a hotkey for saving, or obviously you can just simply go up to File and click Save. We obviously want to save it under a name that we're going to be able to remember so we can remember what it's called for later. Obviously when we start getting different named sessions, we want to keep them in order and know what's what. So Chopin and Prelude, and I already have one here because obviously I tested it out. 28, we'll go lessons. For me, obviously you can go for whatever name you want, whatever will hopefully make you aware of what it is for later. Now, because I've produced the MIDI files for this course in Sibelius, it has its own. Well, Sibelius has its own playback system, and therefore it uses MIDI for that. And generally, it exports. When I click Export MIDI, it exports a MIDI file that it uses to play back in its own capacity, if you like. So that because of that, it has some sort of MIDI instructions that are applied sort of as a default to the MIDI file. So when we import them into GarageBand, as we have now, it carries those that information over. It doesn't leave a lot of information. It doesn't leave a lot of information in that sort of is important here, if that makes sense. So it doesn't leave information in that's too much information in that's going to affect us in a negative way. And to be honest, we could probably leave, for the purposes of this section, leave the controllers in because we're not going to necessarily work with them. However, I think it's good now to get rid of them and demonstrate that, as in later, especially for the strings later on, although for any of them, because we'll start laying out our ensembles, we'll want to get rid of the instructions because it will obviously overwrite any changes we do. So the main ones are volume, which is represented here by this, and panning, this one here, which is essentially the positioning of the instrument within the stereo field between left and right speakers. So if I obviously pull it to the right, it's going to be on only in the right speaker, and that gives the effect of it seeming as though it's to the right of us. However, can also move it to left. We can just position it between, so it's about weighting it between the speakers, and that gives the perception of it being in a position between our two speakers. Likewise, volume, we can mute it or give it some gain. You are limited to +6 decibels in this, although that should be plenty. We won't even really need to increase it for this. It just boosts the audio signal or reduces its gain so that it's either louder or quieter. I guess you could think of it as sort of like the amount of current that's running through something in terms of electronics. So the more current you have running through it, or the more power running through a system, is represented here by volume. Or if you reduce it, then there's less signal going through, and therefore it's quieter. I hope that analogy works. I thought I was going to dig myself into a hole there, try and remember my GCSE physics and electronics work, circuitry. So now we obviously need to get rid of that, but I will show you what the problem is. So if I bring this right down, that means we've essentially muted the track. If I then pull this right to the right, then you'd expect it to be, well, first of all, you'd expect it to be silent, but at least you'd also expect, if you could hear it, to be entirely on the right-hand side speaker only. However, when I go back to the beginning, it resets, and it would have reset if I'd pressed space as well, because those instructions from Sibelius are are getting in the way. So we just need to get rid of them, and to do that we simply double click on this region, or go up to here, or we can simply select the region and then select and deselect via that, or by pressing E. A few different ways there. And then once this panel's open, we need to go to this button here, the automation button, although it's automation specific to this region because that's what we're in this piano roll. Then we need to go down to volume in the drop down box, which is in several places. It doesn't really matter which one you select. And then we simply, if I move the play header, there's a little node here. We just need to double click that to get rid of it, and we can tell it's not been activated because it's gone grey and we can't really see the line anymore. We can sort of see it faintly in the background. And likewise with panning, which is green line, we just simply want to go to this node and double click on it again, same principle, and that's our panning and volume gone. So that means we can simply reset this by dragging it to 0, or we can double click and click 0. Likewise, we can drag up and down on this, or double click and press 0 and enter, and it sets the panning to central and the volume to 0. Obviously, to just check that they're not moving or not being reset is by going back to the start, then pressing play. Perfect. So we've got rid of default information from Sibelius, and that means we can now start working with the MIDI.